Frank Olson is a scientist, a husband, a father of 3. He works for the U.S. Army. Colleagues describe him as quiet, careful, brilliant, a man who follows the rules. Tonight, he is not okay. He has not been okay for 9 days. 9 days earlier, Frank attended a work retreat in rural Maryland, a small gathering. Colleagues he trusted. There was dinner, there were drinks. What Frank did not know, what no one told him, was that his drink had been spiked with LSD by the CIA. He was not a test subject who volunteered. He was not a criminal. He was not an enemy of the state. He was just a man at dinner. In the days that followed, Frank Olson unraveled. He told his wife something was wrong. He could not explain what. He did not know what had been done to him. On the night of November 28th, Frank Olson went through the window of his 10th floor hotel room. He was 43 years old. The government called it a suicide. His family called it something else entirely. Frank Olson's story did not make headlines in 1953. It was buried, classified, filed away. But Frank Olson was not alone. He was one of hundreds, and possibly more, who were used without their knowledge, without their consent, in one of the most secret and disturbing programs in American government history. It was called MKUltra, and this is what they did. It is 1953. The Cold War is not a metaphor, it is a daily, suffocating reality. The United States and the Soviet Union are locked in a silent war of technology, weapons, and ideas. American intelligence officials are convinced that communist nations have discovered a way to control the human mind. They believe the Soviets are brainwashing captured soldiers, and they are terrified of falling behind. So inside the Central Intelligence Agency, a group of officials decide they cannot wait. They launch a secret program to study mind control, not to understand it from a distance, but to develop it themselves. And for over 2 decades, it will operate in the shadows of American democracy. The story begins just after World War II. American intelligence officers had been quietly studying Nazi human experimentation records, research on mescaline and other substances conducted on prisoners at Dachau. Disturbing as they were, these documents became early reference points for what the CIA was beginning to imagine. By 1950, the CIA had already launched a predecessor program called Project Artichoke. It explored hypnosis, drugs, and psychological pressure during interrogations. It asked one central question: could an agent be made to act against their own will? Then on April 13, 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles formally approved a new expanded program. He called it MKUltra.
I understand the reluctance in this room, but the gravity of our situation demands immediate action. We cannot afford to wait any longer.
The name was bureaucratic and cold. The ambition behind it was not. MKUltra would eventually involve at least 150 separate research projects contracted to 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies, many of which reportedly had no idea they were working for the CIA. The program was run primarily by a man named Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist from New York, a PhD from Caltech. Gottlieb believed that LSD, a powerful hallucinogenic drug, might hold the key to breaking down the human mind and rebuilding it in a desired direction. He became one of the most powerful unelected figures in American Cold War history, and almost no one outside the CIA knew his name. Beginning in the early 1950s, CIA operatives and contracted researchers reportedly began administering LSD to subjects without their consent. Some were prisoners, some were mental patients, some were soldiers, some were ordinary civilians who had simply checked into a hospital or attended a research study. Many were told they were receiving standard medical treatment. According to declassified documents, some subjects were dosed repeatedly. Over days, weeks, even months, the program did not stop at drugs. Researchers explored hypnosis, sensory deprivation, electroconvulsive therapy, psychological isolation, and combinations of all of the above. Some experiments were conducted at prestigious institutions: Stanford University, Johns Hopkins, Columbia University. By the early 1960s, the CIA had also set up what were called safe houses in San Francisco and New York. Operatives would lure men, often from vulnerable populations, to these locations, dose them with LSD, and watch from behind one-way mirrors. This operation was called Project Midnight Climax. It reportedly ran for years before senior CIA officials were even fully aware of its scope. CIA Director Richard Helms, anticipating investigations, ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files. Most records were shredded. The story might have ended there, buried forever. But then, a bureaucratic accident, a cache of approximately 20,000 documents had been misfiled in a financial records building. They survived the purge. They were discovered in 1977 during a Freedom of Information Act search. And suddenly, the world knew. The confirmed evidence comes from 3 sources: 20,000 surviving CIA documents, Senate testimony from former CIA officials, including Sidney Gottlieb himself, under oath, and the 1975 Church Committee report, which first publicly exposed the program's existence. The Senate hearings confirmed it clearly. LSD was administered to non-consenting subjects. CIA witnesses acknowledged it themselves. Regarding Frank Olson, the CIA acknowledged in 1975 that he had been dosed with LSD without his consent shortly before his death. The U.S. government paid a settlement to his family. A 1994 independent autopsy reported findings that Frank's family argued were inconsistent with a simple fall. The case was never officially reclassified as a homicide. In Canada, a 1986 investigation confirmed that Dr. Ewan Cameron received funding channeled through a CIA front organization. 9 Canadian survivors later sued both the Canadian government and the CIA. The CIA settled out of court. It is important to say what remains genuinely unknown. Because the majority of MKUltra documents were destroyed, historians are working from an incomplete record. Congressional testimony estimated hundreds of non-consenting subjects. But the true number cannot be confirmed. Some former CIA officials have argued that the program was a product of its time, a response to a real threat that America did not fully understand. This view does not justify what occurred, but it is part of the honest historical record, the scale, the full chain of command. For the men and women subjected to these experiments, often without knowing what was happening to them, the consequences were lasting and severe. Some experienced prolonged psychological disturbances. Some lost their jobs, their relationships, their sense of reality. Many were drawn from vulnerable populations: prisoners, psychiatric patients, people without resources or advocates. Many had no path to justice. Frank Olson's son, Eric, devoted a significant portion of his life to investigating his father's death. The family's experience became a symbol, not just of one tragedy, but of the broader human cost of institutional secrecy. The Canadian survivors described confusion, memory loss, and emotional harm that persisted for years. Some said the treatments had erased memories from before their hospitalization, memories of their childhoods, their families, their own names. Think of informed consent as a lock on the door of your own mind. You decide who comes in. MKUltra was a systematic attempt to pick that lock, not for the benefit of the person inside, but for the benefit of those standing outside. It was not a rogue operation by a few bad actors. It was authorized at the highest levels of U.S. intelligence and carried out with the cooperation of respected scientific institutions. The legal frameworks that govern human experimentation today were significantly shaped by the exposure of programs like MKUltra. The National Research Act of 1974, which created mandatory oversight for human research, was passed in the direct aftermath of these revelations. The lesson was real, the protection was real, but the cost of that lesson was paid by people who had no choice in the matter.